Welcome to the Art of TradeStation, customizing studies without programming. These presentations, they are designed to help you with the TradeStation platform. We're not expecting you to become a TradeStation programmer, but still, there are things on the TradeStation platform that everyone can do. And with a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of customizing, you can take every study to the next level and make it work for the way that you want to analyze the markets, which I think is most important. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the things you can do on TradeStation to customize studies without having to become a programmer. But before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about some disclosures. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about in this presentation is for educational purposes only. That is not a recommendation of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable to everyone. If I look at past historical performance, this is no guarantee of future results. And we all need to be aware of all the risks that are associated with trading online. So if anybody needs a little bit more information about the disclosures, go to tradestation.com and you'll find all the disclosure information there. Before I jump over into the topic of today's presentation, I wanted to tell you about what we're doing at youcantrade.com. You Can Trade is an educational platform, and TradeStation is hosting two channels. Getting Started with TradeStation, which is completely free, and we meet there every Wednesday to talk about TradeStation platforms. Tomorrow, we're going to meet there at 10:30 in the morning Eastern Time. So if you want to attend the Getting Started class, so you just go to youcantrade.com, and on the left navigation, you're going to find links for the Getting Started channel. We do a follow-up session, which is more like a Q&A for anybody that's getting started with TradeStation. You can join us, and we open up the floor for Q&A, and you can ask any questions related to the TradeStation platform, and we can do live demonstrations during that session. So I want to invite everyone to join me tomorrow inside of my Getting Started Q&A. But once you're ready to take your TradeStation education to the next level, we offer the TradeStation Masterclass. Masterclass is more like a premium channel. We have courses in there. We talk about strategy concepts. We meet there every single day live, and we provide essential platform training, including strategy trading, technical analysis, and EasyLanguage programming. All the sessions are archived, so if you cannot make it on a live session, you have an opportunity to watch them in a video. And we have multiple opportunities for Q&As. We call them Ask the TradeStation Expert. We meet every Tuesday and every Friday. And these are open sessions, again, where you can ask any questions about the TradeStation platform. All right, so keep that in mind. Visit youcantrade.com and check out TradeStation's channels, the Getting Started with TradeStation and the TradeStation Masterclass. You'll find the links on the left navigation tab once you go there. Let's go ahead and get started here. By the way, the times that I just mentioned, the sessions at 10:30 tomorrow and 11:30 tomorrow, those are all Eastern Time sessions. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let me switch over here to my TradeStation platform, and we are going to get started. I'm going to open up a chart right here in the TradeStation platform, and let's just start with something simple. All right. This is a chart of Ford. I'm going to make it a daily chart. And every chart in TradeStation starts off with account orders and positions connected. Let me disable that. It'll clear up the chart with all those signals that appear there. And the first thing that I'm going to do is show you what you can do to studies that are already built in. I'm going to put in one of the studies that come on TradeStation. It's a moving average one line right here. Everyone should have it if you're using TradeStation. I don't want to edit it. I'm just going to plot it on the chart to show you what it looks like by default. And this is it. You see the blue line. Everybody understands what a moving average is doing. It's just averaging closing prices and plotting those values on the chart. But I can go in there and change the way that the math is working. I can go in there and change what is being used in order to calculate that average. Let me double click on the line. Double clicking on the line is the shortcut that I use to customize the study. You can also go here to studies and edit studies, it takes you to the same place. But sometimes I just rather double click on the study, it takes me there directly. And in the inputs is like a window that you can open into any study in TradeStation and make modifications. So let's talk about some of the things you can do to some of these studies without becoming a programmer. So the first thing that I notice here is that it's using a price of close. That's interesting because it's taking the closing price of every candle and creating this average that you can see as a blue line on the candles. But at that closing word or the close word can be anything you want. And I can make this a little bit more inclusive of other price points in the candle. Who is to say that the closing price, although there is a inherent importance about the closing price of every bar, but who is to say that maybe using a different price point in the candle can give you maybe an interesting calculation, maybe not the best calculation, but something interesting or something to think about. Because what you see in here, the word can be changed to anything you want. What I'm going to do, for example, right now is choose a price that is more representative of the whole bar, some sort of an average. So I'm going to take the closing price and I'm going to add it to the opening, the high, and the low, and then I'm just going to divide it by 4. And that way I have an average of the bar. So I'm going to open up parentheses because parentheses is a good way for you to control the order of operations. So if I want to add all those price points first, I'm going to put them inside parentheses. Close plus high plus open plus low. Maybe not the order in which I would have preferred them, but it doesn't really matter. We're just adding them together. So it doesn't matter which one comes first and which one comes second. So I close my parentheses and I do a / and I divide it by 4. So once it adds all those prices together, it divides by 4, and that gives you an average. So what you're going to tell or what you're going to notice is that as soon as I click OK on this button, you're going to see a minor shift on that moving average, because now it's not only creating that average on the closing price of every bar, now it's creating or averaging the prices on every candle, and the average that is being calculated is based on the average of the bar. So it's some sort of an average of the averages, right? So let's go ahead and click OK. And even though, it was a very minor shift, but now we're not only using the closing price, we're using the average price of the bar. If you take into account the open, high, low, and close, and then you average them together. Isn't that cool? Now, let me go ahead and double click there. And you can continue to modify the formula as many times as you want to. For example, you can do, if you wanted to do, instead of the average of the bar, let's say that you want to do the midpoint. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the high plus the low, close parentheses, and I'm going to divide this by 2. And then that gives me an average of the midpoint of every bar. And you can see that there's a minor shift on the indicator, but it allows you to go in there and change simple things about the studies that you can change. Let's go ahead and show you something else. Let's go ahead and go to studies and go to add study, because with TradeStation, there are some studies that are built in that are exclusively designed or specifically designed for you to make modifications to them. In fact, they start with the word custom. So right here in the indicators, if I scroll down to the word custom, you can see that I have customs 1 line, 2, 3, 4 lines, or even a custom quote. Let me show you what you can do with a custom indicator. Custom 1 line, I'm going to click OK, and the indicator goes right there at the bottom of the screen. I don't know what the indicator is doing because I didn't check what the formula was, but I can go there and check it. Double click on the study, and if you go to the inputs, you can see the formula right there. The formula is the close minus the close of 10 bars ago. Whatever you see inside of inputs, square brackets, and a number inside of square brackets, that is just a historical reference. It's telling TradeStation to go back that number of candlesticks or number of bars and grab the closing price of that bar in history and then do the math that way. So what you see right here, this magenta line at the bottom, is doing that precisely. It's taking the closing price of right now, which is $14.50. It's looking at the closing price 10 bars ago, and it's telling me that right now, the closing price is 46 cents lower than it was 10 days ago. Isn't that interesting? So that formula right there, as you can already tell, can be anything you want. So rather than using a mathematical formula, let me introduce you to some words that you can put in there. Um, these are easy language words. I don't want to say easy language because people sometimes get scared about easy language. No, that is a programming language. I don't want to learn it. But you'll be surprised at how much you can do to TradeStation studies by using a little bit of easy language. We're not going to go to the full-blown development environment. We're not going to do full-blown programming, but we're going to use some easy language elements that are going to allow you to modify this in any possible way. Let me go ahead and remove this because I'm going to plot something that is not even a formula. I'm going to do close W for parentheses 1. Take a look at the difference between a square bracket and a parentheses. In this particular word that I'm using close W, 1 in parentheses, and the parentheses in this particular reserved word is looking at a prior period. What this word is doing, let me see if this works before I continue explaining what this is. Okay, it does work. So what this word is doing, let me go back in there to the customized window. The close W, what it's doing is grabbing the closing price of the week that is referenced inside of parentheses. If you say 1 is the prior week, last week. So what this is doing is giving you the closing price of last week. That was on Friday. And it's plotting it as a line right here on the screen. Isn't that cool? And the same way that you have a close W for close of the week, you also have a close M for close of the month. Let me just change the W here to an M. And it's going to go 1 bar ago. And I'm going to say, okay. And this gives you the close of a month ago. This is $14.86. Let's see if that is correct. We are in the month of July. If I go to the month of June 30th, does everybody see the closing price right there? The closing price of that candle is $14.86, which matches that value here in this indicator. And at this point, I can just grab that line and drop it right here on top of the candles so I can see how the bars or the daily bars correlate to the closing price of the month. That would be an interesting analysis, right? Let me grab the line, drop it on top of the candles. I'm going to say same axis as the underlying data and click OK. And this is what I see. So now you can see where the month closed in June at 1486, and you can see how the bars in July, relate to that closing price. And you can see that historically as well. A lot of times when you use a study like this, TradeStation will connect the lines in some diagonal way from the time that value is updated. Like, for example, from the month of June, which is over here, to the month of July, of course, it's going to connect those two lines right here, which can be modified so that it doesn't look like there's something going on in between. Let me go ahead and double click on the study, and I'm just going to change the style. Instead of using a line, I can use crosses instead, and I can make them any size or thickness that I want. Maybe I'm going to choose this one right here. So what that does is that it avoids having those diagonal lines from one month to the other, but you can still see these levels by plotting it in a different style, which I sometimes like to do, especially when you have these connecting lines from one level to the next. So the words that you would want to use, let me go back in there. Sometimes if you don't double click on the line itself, it goes to a different dialog. So inputs, again, close M. We have close W and we have close D for the close of the day. So if you're looking at an intraday chart, you can also plot what the close of yesterday or the close of 2 days ago was on your chart, which I find very useful. And the same word that you see here can be used on the other price points of the candle. So not only can you look at the close of last month, you can look at the high of last month or the low of last month. Just do high M or low M, and EasyLanguage will understand that. So these are words that are part of the language We didn't do any programming. We just used some of these elements inside of our indicator to make it work and make it plot the way that we wanted. Maybe it's a little confusing, but sometimes if you want to make a historical reference of any value, you use square brackets. So let's say the close of 10 bars ago, like we saw previously. These ones over here are a little bit different because these are easy language elements that were created as part of the language. And these ones require parentheses, which is, I know at the very beginning, it's kind of confusing because you're left asking yourself, well, when should I use brackets or when should I use parentheses? When it's something when it's an element that's already created by easy language, most of the time it'll tell you that parentheses are needed. But if it's something that you're referencing historically on the database, let's say I'm referencing volume 10 bars ago, then you would use, square brackets instead, making it a historical reference. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other studies here that you can customize. Let me show you something with multi-symbols. Let me open up another workspace and bring up a chart. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this is Ford right here. Let me create a ratio between two different airlines. I'm going to switch the chart to LUV on a daily chart. So this is Love, this is Southwest Airlines, and I'm going to combine this with American Airlines. So I'm going to insert a second data stream. You can do that by going to data and going to add symbol. And the symbol that I'm going to add is AAL. I think that's the symbol for American Airlines. Yep, that's what it is. I'm going to disable account orders and positions here. But a lot of times, you may create a multi-symbol chart and perform all sorts of calculations between these two symbols. I find that very fascinating because think about the potential. You could have a portfolio of different symbols and you could create your own index of how your portfolio is performing. If you take all those symbols and you put them all together into one chart, you can create a percentage change and see how your portfolio is changing as a whole by combining these symbols together. These are two symbols only, Southwest and American Airlines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a ratio between them. I know that Love is trading at $51 and American Airlines is trading at $20. I'm going to use a custom one-line study to do something cool here. Custom one line. And let's go ahead and click OK. Let me modify the formula because I know that it's not going to be what I want. I'm going to go to the inputs. This is the same one that I used at the very beginning, the first example that I presented on, but I'm going to change this. And I'm going to say close data one. Data one is the easy language word that you would use in order to reference symbols on a chart. Data one is always the first symbol that starts the chart. And as you add additional symbols to the chart, they'll be assigned a number. So here in my chart, data two would be American Airlines. So when you do calculations like this instead of a study, you can reference different symbols. This is pretty cool because you have the ability of adding up to 50 different symbols in one single chart. That's very powerful. I mean, can you imagine adding 50 different data streams and having the ability of making the calculations you want using all those 50 symbols? That's impressive. Right here, I have two, and I'm going to make a calculation between them. I'm going to take the close of data one and divide it by the close of data two. As simple as that. Be aware that data one and data two, there's no space in between the number and the word. It's all one word. And Easy Language knows exactly what that means. It just looks at the closing price of that data stream. And what I've used right here in the middle is just a /. This is just a standard division mathematical operator. And that's what it's doing. It's just taking the close of data one, dividing it by the close of data two. And what do you get? Right here, 2.57. And yeah, if you grab a calculator and you take those $50 and you divide them by 20, you get 2.57 exactly. And that is a ratio between the two symbols and the relationship between them. Very interesting. That mathematical formula can be anything you want, and it can be as many symbols as you need them to be. A lot of times, I'm going to say this right now because a lot of times, if you want something that it's cleaner and something that you can find with a custom name instead of just being a custom one line, yes, you'll have to go to the development environment and create that. But if you want something, very quick that you want to calculate, like this one that I just did, you can use a custom one line for that whenever you want. Let me clean this out. I'm going to open up a new workspace, create a new chart. All right, and this is an intraday chart of love. I'm going to leave it like that, Southwest Airlines. I'm going to go to studies and add study. And I'm going to use this study that's called custom two lines. Let me show you something cool. I'm going to click OK. And the two lines that you see right there at the bottom, well, you only see one. The problem is that they're stacked on top of each other. And that's why it looks at one line. If I double click on the line and I go to the inputs, you can see how the formula is the same for both lines. And that's why they're stacked on top of each other. But I can make those anything I want. I can make line 1 the high and line 2 the low, which will grab the high and the low of every single candle and plot it down here. Let me click OK. Take a look at what the indicator looks like. I'm going to grab the line and I'm going to drop it on top of my chart. And I'm going to select same axis as underlying data. And this is what it looks like. You see? Just two bands. One is connecting all the highs of all the candles. The other one is connecting all the lows of all the candles. Let's go ahead and modify that a little bit further. I'm going to show you the EasyLanguage dictionary for you to see what kind of things you can do in here. Let me double click on the lines. And if you look at the bottom of this dialog where you put in the inputs or where you modify the inputs, you have a button here for dictionary. This dictionary button will take you to the EasyLanguage dictionary and show you every possible word that there is in the code. Some of them are going to be pretty complex, and I'm going to tell you that from the get-go, but a lot of times you're going to find some very simple things you can do to your technical studies to make them the way you want. I'm going to go to the dictionary, and right here we have user functions, which is what I recommend everyone concentrates on. User functions, and you find this is a collection of about 400 different functions that you can put into EasyLanguage. The nice thing about going into the dictionary in here is that it gives you examples on how to use them. Let me look up something that I want to use, which is just a simple average. I'm going to go here. Here I have the word average. I'm going to click on it. You can see all sorts of different averages, but I'm just going to concentrate on something simple. I highlight the word average, and right down here, it gives me an example on how the word average is used. Of course, over here, there's a value 1 and an equal sign. I'm going to try to ignore that and just look at the word average and what comes right after it. Because average, as you can see right here below, it uses two parameters. It uses the price and a length. And if you look at the two values that are inside parentheses, the price is the close and the length is the 9. So yeah, you have to tell this average function what value is it the one that you want to average and for how many periods, how many of those values you want to put together in the formula. That's all you need for the average, and you have to put those two parameters inside parentheses. And that's why I said, look at the example, because this is a great way for you to know how to utilize these functions, and it'll open up, all these studies for you. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. This place, sorry, I shouldn't have clicked on it. So this place was 0. I'm going to take here on formula number 1, and I'm going to type in the word average, open up the parentheses. I'm going to do the average of the high over a period of 20 bars. You see, just as the example was showing, I'm just going to type it exactly there the same way. And I'm going to do the same thing for the low. Average of the low over a period of 20 bars. So not only I'm plotting the high and the low, as you can see right here, now it's taking all the highs and creating an average, and then it's taking all the lows and creating an average and plotting those two lines. Let's go ahead and click OK. And this is what it looks like. That's interesting, right? Now it looks like a moving average But it's interesting that by using a two-line moving average and averaging the highs and the lows, we're able to create some sort of a channel. Now you start thinking about, how do I use this? Are the candles, do I wait for the candles to be completely above, or do I wait for the candles to be bouncing of the top line or the bottom line? Now it adds a different perspective to the way that you would use a simple moving average. Now, this is just very interesting, right? And notice how easy it was to go in there and change the inputs to the mathematical formula that you want. Let me go ahead and put in a volume average study right here. It's one of the built-in studies of TradeStation. Volume AVG. And that's the default study. It just plots volume average. But this is something that I want to, this is the task that I want to give myself or to accomplish here. What I want to do is I want to mark the candles that have exceeded the average by a certain amount. Not only do I want to see them right there at the bottom as a volume average, maybe I want to get rid of the volume average and only mark the bars that have more than average volume and see those markings on the candles rather than having a full-blown indicator at the bottom. How do I do that? Well, you go here to studies, add study, and the same way that we have a custom line for indicator, just go to show me and you find the similar custom show me. But this one, or the show me, is one of those specialized technical analysis in TradeStation that is going to mark the candle that meets certain criteria. So in the custom show me, I am going to edit that show me before it goes on the chart. So it takes me to the inputs, and the criteria that you see here is high, less than the high 1 bar ago, and the low greater than the low 1 bar ago. You see that historical reference again being used here, but this is a true false variable. This is not a mathematical formula, but you can see how the custom show me will evaluate that true false expression and either decide whether it needs to mark the candle or not based on that condition. It'll only mark the candles that meet the criteria, which is very interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase that formula. I'm going to use the word ticks. The word ticks in EasyLanguage is the one, or is the word that you use to reference volume, or the number of shares or the number of contracts that are traded on each one candle. I want the ticks to be greater than the average ticks for a period of 50 bars. Now that's just a simple formula. Notice that I'm using the word ticks also inside of the average function. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing whatever number of volume belongs to each candle, and I'm averaging them together for 50 periods. And if the ticks on the current bar is greater than that average, then it's going to mark the bar. Let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to go here to the style. All right, let me make that dot a little bit bigger, and the color, magenta is okay. Let me just click OK to that. So take a look at my chart. Every candle that is higher than the average is marked with a little dot. Maybe it's a little excessive because I have way too many bars that do that, but let's go ahead and modify the formula even further. If I right click and edit the custom show me, I can go to the inputs and say, well, I want the ticks to be greater than the average, but I'm going to take this whole average and I multiply it by 1.5. What does that do? Well, it's going to take the average, multiply with 1.5, and the ticks right now have to exceed that number, which means that it has to be higher than 50% than the average, or exceed the average by 50%. Let me go ahead and click OK. Let's see. Oh, I didn't do something here. So instead of, I didn't do the multiplication. Multiplication's an asterisk, so asterisk 1.5. Now there we go. So now we have fewer dots. We still have a lot, but you can see that you can modify the formula to continue to refine what is it that you're looking for. And maybe I can take this further and say, I want volume to be double its average on that. So instead of 1.5, I'm just going to type in a 2. So see, some dots are removed, and only, those candles where the volume is double the average are the ones that are being marked. So use that, to identify any type of condition. That criteria input is very flexible, and just have to put in an expression that returns either true or false in order for it to mark those bars, okay? Let me go ahead and remove my volume average. Notice that I removed the volume average indicator, and I still have my show me identifying those bars with out of the ordinary volume. It has double the average in volume. Let me do another study here. Let me go here to studies and add something like the RSI. All right, so the RSI goes right there at the bottom. Everybody sees that? Okay. So what I'm going to do in this RSI, and we're almost running out of time, but I want to give you a few more examples so you can see how flexible these studies can be. I have my RSI study right there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint some candles a different color based on what the RSI is doing. Wouldn't it be cool for you to color a candle that is, for example, oversold or overbought? How do you do that? Well, it's something very simple. In fact, we have a paint bar that changes the color of a candle based on a condition. I'm just using the RSI as an example, but if you have a condition in your mind that you would want to use, and when it's true, you want to paint the candle a particular color, that's something you can do very easily. So let me go ahead and go to studies and add a study, and I'm going to go here to the paint bar category. And under paint bar, we also have a custom paint bar. I'm going to prompt for editing, click OK, and then go to the inputs. The criteria or the default criteria for this paint bar is something different. You know, high less than the high 1 bar ago, and the low is greater than the low 1 bar ago. So this condition right here, if you think about this, this is what identifies what's called an inside bar. So high, lower than the previous high, and low, greater than the previous low. It gives you an inside bar. Let's go ahead and remove that though. And I'm going to use something similar to or related to the RSI. Again, if you're not sure how to write the RSI formula, go to the dictionary. In the dictionary, the functions will tell you all sorts of technical studies, mathematical formulas. So if I scroll down right here on this list of functions, I'm going to find here it is, RSI. So I click the RSI just to show the example right here at the bottom. Parameters, I can see that it uses price and length, very similar to the moving average. And this is the way that it's used. Again, I'm going to ignore some of the components around it. What I'm interested in is just the word RSI and the parameters that follow it. You can see that the word close and the number 14 are inside parentheses because that's what the RSI needs in order to calculate. It needs the price that it's being calculated and how many bars used in the calculation. Let me go ahead and cancel out of this. I'm going to go here into the criteria, and I want to say that RSI of the close for a period of 14 bars, which is the default period of the RSI, is greater than, well, let's do the oversold. It's less than 30. And I'm going to paint those bars. Let's paint them, I don't know, let's paint them yellow. Let's match this color right here. This is like a Dodger blue, but I'll do a color that is close as possible. I'll do this color right here. And I'll say, okay. So take a look at my chart. Take a look at every time that the RSI is oversold, meaning that it's below 30, my candles are painted. So now I've combined two technical ideas into my chart. The volume one, the one that identifies, you know, every time that you get volume double the average. And now this one is painting the bar whenever it's oversold, whenever the RSI is below 30. And of course, you can do the opposite here for the overbought if you want to do the two sides of the spectrum. So here I can remove the RSI because I've already incorporated it as a paint bar, and I can see whenever any bar is oversold or overbought. Okay, so that's an interesting way of looking at these custom studies and modifying them so that you can add more flexibility to your TradeStation. Can you do it at the same time, the overbought and the oversold? not with this particular custom show me, because the custom show me only has one color. What I could do is this. I can go in here, and in the inputs, yeah, the RSI less than 30, I can have an AND condition. An RSI of the close of 14 bars is greater than 70. So yes, you can combine different true false with an AND. Just make sure that the whole expression returns true or false. When I do that, oh, I got an error. Oh, because I know what I did. I did something stupid. Let's go back here to edit studies. This is the custom PaintBar. Customize it, and it should not be an AND, because it cannot be oversold and overbought at the same time. So instead of connecting it with an AND, I have to connect them with an OR. Either it is overbought or it is oversold, and then it'll paint it. Now you can see the cyan ones are painting for both conditions, overbought and oversold. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last example on this presentation, which is more like a RadarScreen study, but you can do all sorts of calculations there as well. Let me open up my RadarScreen, show you what we can do here. All right, I'm going to add a list of symbols, data. Let me do the Dow Jones Industrial. Let me remove the top two. And I'm going to change the symbols here to daily. I want to maybe do something with an ATR. Let me add one of the custom or one of the built-in studies that are part of TradeStation. We have one that calculates average true range. So let me go up here and we'll look for it. Here it is. I'm going to add it and move it all the way down next to volume today. All right, so the volume, the average true range is loaded, and it tells you, some sort of a volatility measure for each one of the symbols. A lot of times, and this is probably you in your own trading, you probably use ATR to set some stops. You probably use maybe 2 or 3 ATRs for either a target or a stop, and you want to be able to calculate it, much easier than looking at an average to range and doing the math in your head. So for example, I know that Apple is trading at $145. It has an ATR of 2.36. So I could say in my mind, well, I want my stop to be twice that. So that would be about 472. And then I come over here and I look at the price and I say, well, if I take 472 and I subtract it from that, I'm going to wind up somewhere close to $140 even. Not exactly precise, but you can make an approximation. But here you can add a custom study that does the math for you. I'm going to come over here and add a column. Let's do custom one line. All right, the custom one line is there. It has a default formula. That's why it plots values. I'm going to right click on the column header, go to studies, and I'm going to edit this column for all symbols. And you can see how the formula is just taking the close minus the close 10 bars ago. I'm going to change that. I'm going to say, well, first of all, I need the function for average to range. Let's go here to the dictionary. Dictionary. All right. And if I scroll down to here, no, I'm going to go to user functions. Sorry. Make sure that you're in user functions. And there's a function called average true range. And if you look at the parameters, it only needs 1. So the way that you would type it here is AVG true range, and then in parentheses, the number of bars that you want that average true range to calculate. Let me click OK. And I think by default, the average true range that we use right here is using 14 bars. Let's see if that is the case. So I'm going to do, well, it already put it in there. So that's awesome. AVG, true range. And I'm going to do 14 inside parentheses. All right. And when I click OK, yeah, you can see that it matches the average true range column. But that I don't want to do just that. Let me right click here and go to studies and customize that for all symbols. I want to take the closing price of the stock, and I'm going to subtract not only one average true range or one ATR. I'm going to take this whole ATR and I'm going to multiply that by 2 so that it takes 2 ATRs and then subtracts it from the close. I'm going to click OK, and there it is. You see? So the last trading price is 145. I know that my stop, if I'm using 2 ATRs, would be $140.90. That's pretty cool, right? That you can do all these mathematical formulas inside of these custom studies. And that's why I wanted to highlight many of these examples in a session like this so that you can have this flexibility when you're using studies on TradeStation. You're not limited to how the studies come in by default. You can make all sorts of modifications, not only to simple formulas like this, but you can overhaul the whole study if you wanted to and make it your own. That's some of the capabilities that TradeStation has for you. And that's one of the reasons why TradeStation is one of the most sought out platforms out there, because of the flexibility it provides you. All right, so this is it for today. I want to appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to leave you with the masterclass invitation. Make sure you check out the content and see what we're doing there. The schedule is posted in the channel, but we are available on youcantrade.com. Make sure to visit us there, okay? Thank you guys for being part of this presentation, and I hope to see you again in the future. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye, everyone.